Choosing Life by ginnyrules27, Chapter 24. The day Mal had been looking forward to and dreading had finally arrived. It was the day that Stephanie and Maurice were officially discharged from the hospital and able to make their way home with their parents. Of course, Mal had been looking forward to that, as it was her children essentially getting a clean bill of health, a guarantee that there had been no health scares in the future. Her kids would be fine. However, she also had been dreading it, because it meant she'd have to deal with her worst enemy since becoming queen. The media. Dean, to his credit, had set up exclusive interviews with Snow White and Edward Darling. Their television station and newspaper respectively had their reputations of being friendly to the royal family. Plus, it was a good way to get the twins acclimated to the flashes going off around them. Though even the most patient baby would get fussy with this lot, Mal thought as she stood outside the door of the hospital. Ben was holding their daughter while she had their son firmly in her arms. Honestly, while I know the kingdom getting their heir is exciting, did every single news corporation have to come out? However, the news corporations weren't the only ones who had come out to the hospital that day. Harry and Jay were stationed by the limo to ensure no one would mess with the kids, and of course one of Ben's new hires for the guards was standing right next to Ben. Ben had offered him the day off out of habit, but Cameron Bubbles had refused, reminding Ben of what he had told him upon his hiring.
"Thank you, but your time for photos has ended," Cameron said,
speaking just as Stephanie had begun to whimper slightly.
"Let's get King Ben and Queen Mal to get their children home, and then, if they so choose, they'll contact you about possibly allowing for interviews and photos with the royal family."
"Remind me to give this guy a raise," Ben muttered into Mal's ear. "See how nice it is to actually use your guards," Mal muttered back to him, though I'm disappointed he didn't say the whole royal family.
"That's because everyone and their mothers knows that Estelle and Nick's a part of our family. And, hey, we'll get to introduce them to the kids today."
Mal shook her head, more than a little amused. "Come on then, let's get these guys to the limo and then we can get them home." Ben smiled and the two of them made their way through the throngs of reporters. Most of them were giving them a wide berth, though Ben did stop about halfway through to talk to one of them. "I taught you well, Ben," Mal thought as she noticed Ben was talking to was Edward Darling. He was probably one of the most trusted media personalities for the royal family. Snow for being the second. However, she was with her own family. Understandable with Emma being pregnant.
"How's your family doing?"
Mal heard Ben ask.
"They're doing well, sire,"
Edward said with a smile.
"Of course, Wendy is more than looking forward to the fact that I'm working part-time, as opposed to the full schedule I had before. Granted, anything was better than what I was off on the first lines, but still, she likes it when I'm home." "I've got a wife like that too," Ben said, looking over at Mal and giving her a smile. "I'll let you get to the limo, sire," Edward said to him. "Congratulations again. Jane and Daniel send their congratulations as well. Tell them thank you, and they didn't need to."
"They wanted to," Edward said, and then seemed to melt into the crowds of reporters as Ben and Mal made their way to the awaiting limo at the end of the throng of reporters. Things were going seemingly well, what with the press obeying the cut-off time for the pictures, and the only cameras rolling being those of television media. Yes, truly, every member of the media was there that day. "Honestly," Mal thought as she reached the limo and smiled at both Jay and Harry, who had stationed themselves by the door. "You'd think I was the first woman to ever give birth." Maurice cooed softly as she placed him in his car seat, making sure to buckle him up as tightly as possible without hurting him. "What happened?" Mal thought as her head snapped up and fury filled her body at the sound of her daughter's terrified cry. Ben didn't look too pleased either as Jay and Harry quickly beat Cameron to the punch and pulled the photographer back. "That damn gazelle! Why were they even there?" "Shh, shh," Mal said softly as she forced her glowing eyes to dim as she looked at her son. Maurice had started to whisper as he heard his sister's cries. "It's all right, little man. Your sister's all right. Your papa's got her. It's okay." Mama's got you. Nothing bad's going to happen. I promise.
No matter how badly she wanted to storm up to the photographer and break his camera, no matter how badly she wanted to murder the man who made her daughter cry, her kids mattered more. Besides, she wasn't sure if the Queen was able to murder anyone. Well, the Queen might not be able to do it, but she had people to do it for her. Like Jay, or Harry, or even Uma if she was so inclined and not pregnant. Oh, the plans she could make. Get in the car, Mal muttered to Ben, keeping her voice low as to avoid being recorded by the press. On it, Ben nodded, and quickly got Stephanie set up in her car seat. Is she all right? I think she's just frightened. The flash probably startled her more than anything. Mal grit her teeth as she worked to avoid snapping at the photographer, who was still in the process of being yelled at by Harry and Jay. Remind me to give them a raise, Ben said as they piled into the car. They don't work for you, Mal reminded him. Oh, right, Ben said with a small sigh before going back to try to comfort his daughter. Mal couldn't help but smile at the sight. It's okay, sweetheart, she said softly. The mean man's gone. It's just Mama, Papa, and your brother here. You're okay. We promise. Stephanie whimpered but calmed down slightly. At the very least, she wasn't crying at the top of her lungs. There we go, Mal said gently as she gave her daughter a small smile. It's okay. We've got you. Think a song might help? Ben asked. You know any? Mal asked as she looked over at her husband. I mean, Mum and Dad would sing to us to sleep at times, but singing wasn't exactly on the Isles lesson plan. Ben nodded. Chad's one of my closest friends. I think I've got something that might work. Then go ahead, Mal said. Thanks, Ben said with a small smile before clearing his throat. Lavender's green, dilly dilly, lavender's blue. If you love me, dilly dilly, I will love you. Both kids seemed to quiet down at the sound of their father's voice, Maurice having been whimpering softly as he heard his sister's cries. We left Cameron behind, didn't we? Mal thought as the realization hit. I hope he was able to get a ride with Jay and Harry, because otherwise... Well, we'll just send a limo to pick him up, and give him a raise, and more time off. The ride back to the castle was, thankfully, uneventful, and soon the twins arrived safely at their parents' arms. Welcome home, Mal whispered as they walked through the doors. No matter how old you get, no matter who you love, this will always be your home. I can certainly agree with that, Ben nodded, but paused as his little sister and little sister-in-law came running out of the side rooms. Mal, did we agree to babysit today? I don't think so, Mal shook her head. Oi, seedling, bookworm! We have names, you know, Genevieve said, but smiled as she ran over to Mal. Besides, bookworm isn't that creative of a nickname, seeing as it could fit Mama or BB too. Good point, Jean, Mal said with a chuckle. But what are you two doing here? Mama and Papa wanted to surprise you, Rhea said with a smile, but I couldn't wait to see the babies. They're here! I take it Estelle and Nix weren't on babysitting duties? They're on the balcony sunbathing. I don't think Mama and Papa knew Jean and me snuck out. Mal sighed. Okay, rule number 1, Gia. Do not worry Mum, unless you want to see an overprotective Mum from now until you hit double digits. I thought number 1 rule was never get into a land war in Asia. Mal blinked. Okay, so Hattie needs to stop reading you The Princess Bride for a bedtime story. And I take it he's not here since you were able to sneak out? I go to the bathroom for 1 minute! Ah, there he is. Mal chuckled. Come on, let's go get surprised. The group made their way into the room that the young kids had previously vacated,
and Mal couldn't help but shake her head in amusement as people looked surprised that she wasn't surprised. You don't think Jean and Rhea running out of the room would ruin the surprise? Mal asked with a small chuckle. Though she was glad to see Cameron was there. However, since Harry and Jay were also there, it stood to reason they had been teleported after the limo at the hospital. Also, who surprises people bringing home infants?
People who know it was either this or we all go and kill that photographer who startled Stephanie, Uma said, smiling at her cousin, which, by the way, offer totally on the table.
If you weren't pregnant, cuz, Mal said, shaking her head.
That'll change in December, Molly, Uma reminded her, but I guess there's no reason to plan revenge that I won't be able to implement in the far, far future. Let's see these guppies.
Ben snorted in amusement. We'd like to present Stephanie Isabel Haley Labette and Maurice Benjamin Adam Labette.
You don't have to give the stuffy talk, Molly. It's just us, Harry said with a small chuckle. Yeah, Mal, listen to his lordship, Hattie said with a small smirk.
Mal chuckled. Is this revenge for all the times Harry used your title, Hattie?
Of course! Oh, hey Harry, you know you and Gil have the same title. Nice try, little lord, but that won't get a rise out of me, Harry said, shaking his head.
Because you know you and Gil are family too? Mal snorted. Alright, enough with trying to make the pirate angry around my newborns. Alright, Stormcloud?
Fine,
Harry chuckled before smiling at the babies.
Hey there, guys. I'm your Uncle Hattie. And I'm the cool uncle. I don't know what lies your Uncle Jip told you. Hey! I only speak the truth, Jip!
Ben snorted softly as he adjusted Stephanie so that her head was better supported.
You two might just be insane. You know that? Thank you, Ben! Chip and Hattie grinned. And clearly you've spent too much time around Ikea and Amir to consider that a compliment, Ben said as he shook his head. Stephanie, clearly your aunts are going to be the more sane members of your extended family.
Ben, remember that our kids' aunts will be including Uma, Mal said as Stephanie cooed softly. Would you describe her as sane?
I'm in the room, cuz!
Uma exclaimed. And my question still stands, Mal chuckled and shook her head softly as Persephone started to gently lead her towards an empty chair. Mom, I'm fine. Besides, I need to call in Estelle. You can do that when you're sitting down, Persephone said, though she couldn't help but smile at her grandson, as he somehow managed to knock the hat off he had been wearing upon release from the hospital. She wasn't going to lie. A small part of her was happy that Maurice had inherited Mal's purple hair, especially with how Stephanie seemed to be a near clone of Ben.
She's right, Mal,
Ben nodded. Ben, you promised you'd stop being an overly protective once the babies were born, Mal said, giving her husband a look.
Mal, you just had given birth 2 days ago. Godling or not, you still need to rest, Ben told her.
Mal sighed and shook her head before letting out a low whistle. A small yip could be heard, and soon both Estelle and Nix were trotting into the room. There you are, boy. Mal smiled as Estelle plopped over to her. Did you have fun in the sun? Estelle yipped, though. And it may be Mal's imagination. It might have been a softer yip than Estelle normally gave. I have 2 very important people I want to introduce you to, Mal told him. These are your new pack members. I guess you'd call them my new pups. The one I have is Maurice. Estelle came over and gently snuffled at Maurice, who, Mal noted, only cooed at the feeling of Estelle's noses on him. And the one Ben has is Stephanie. If you want to go and say hello, boy, and give Nix a chance to say hi to Maurice. Mal said and smiled, as Ben crouched down to allow Estelle the chance to sniff at Estelle. Mal said and smiled as Ben crouched down to allow Estelle the chance to sniff Stephanie. Estelle yipped softly and went to do just that. Thankfully, Stephanie reacted the same as her brother had, and Mal would take it to her grave that she was a little more worried that Stephanie would cry again. Not because she was afraid of Estelle, but because the camera incident was still fairly recent, and Stephanie might have been a baby, but she was also a godling.
Those two are probably the calmest babies I've ever seen,
Huddy said softly as Nick trotted over to snuffle at Stephanie as well. I maintain they get it from Ben, but he insists they get it from me, Mal chuckled.
I dunno, Mal, Hades said. Last I checked, it wasn't your Sunspot who would giggle when I'd yell at pain and panic. Not to mention, you hardly ever cried as a baby.
Seriously? Mal asked, looking at her father. He rarely talked about when she was a baby, though she understood why. Her being kidnapped by Maleficent's goons probably wasn't something her father liked to relive.
Yep,
Ben nodded. Ah, Mal said, looking slightly pleased. Ben grinned.
Told you the kids took after you.
He said, no one likes a know-it-all, Benny. Uma called, not true, Mal married one, Ben called back to her. Mal snorted and shook her head as the welcome home party continued, even allowing Maurice to be out of her arms while the others held the babies. Mal couldn't help but smile at the sight of Carlos holding Stephanie. It was honestly hard to believe he came, especially with his graduation from veterinary school in a few weeks. You didn't think I'd come, Carlos said, looking over at Mal as if he'd read her mind. Mal, you, Uma, and Harry and Jay gave me protection from the horrors of the Isle when we were kids. You and I were both part of the original 4. I'll always be there if you need me. Thanks, Carlos, Mal said with a small smile. Fair warning, you might be called on a lot. I think you might be the only vet in Auradon who wouldn't run in fear from a Cerberus. Then I'll wear the title of exclusive vet of the royal family with pride, Carlos told her, returning the smile. Mal couldn't help but grin and sat back in her chair, Ben coming over and resting a hand on her shoulder. If you had told her when she was 16 that this would have been her life, she wouldn't have believed you. But now, she wouldn't trade it for anything. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. And Ginny, something I've noticed, I'm basically reading their happy ending, because life doesn't end at they lived happily ever after. I love that. And it's just so sweet that the dogs are like sniffing the new pups and someone punched that photographer for startling Steph, because no one does that to a baby. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified for whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and albino pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.